Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. It is June 14th. We are streaming from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Insta. So in terms of how this typically works, usually we have some questions. I answer questions on anything around interviews, career, investment banking, private equity, hedge fund trading, VC. I'll try my best in the industries I don't know as well, as I know IB and PE the best. But yeah, fire away, and we'll give it a shot. Hi, Manuel. How are you? Oh, and Amir, am I going to be able to see the comments coming from IG if I don't have?
I'll feed you.
Oh, you'll feed me. Cool. Okay. So hello to everybody. Welcome if you're just coming in. Manuel is asking thoughts on BNY Mellon. Manuel, can you be more specific? Just my general thoughts on BNY. I actually am not too familiar with the firm, but if you go BNY Mellon, you can see kind of where they rank if we look at some various metrics in the company database. Maybe I could pull this up on the screen, but we're looking at BNY. Here we go. Yeah, overall ranking, we've got about like an 85th percentile overall. Coming from the company database, we're seeing about 58 interview insights there, 238 salaries, and 112 reviews for this firm. Most of the interviews are pretty positive. So in terms of like deal flow, I'm not too familiar with how they're doing. They're often considered like their asset management and trading business is often kind of bigger than the investment bank. So here we go. What can I do in my first year of university to try and get recruited? Hey, Martin, good question. I think your first year of university, a lot of people will tell you you have all this time to decide what you want to do, which is true for most careers. If you're looking to go into high finance, more specifically investment banking, actually your first year of university is actually pretty critical to get ready for that recruiting. So I'm not sure where you go to school, but what I would say is you definitely want to be prepping for and making sure your CV is looking good, making sure your resume is all polished, make sure your LinkedIn profile is looking polished, and then more specifically, you start doing mock interviews. You're preparing for behavioral interviews, developing your, what do we call your 7 stories. This is kind of like why in WSO Academy, we are super into working with actually seniors in high schools or freshmen in college, because we know we have time with them versus people who come to me junior year. We'll still work with them, even MBAs, we'll work with them, but it's just a much harder slog because they have kind of missed one of the most high probability windows of getting into a career in finance. So basically, like if you're coming to me junior year thinking you have 2 years before you graduate, yes, you have 2 years before you graduate. The problem is the end of sophomore year is when all of the junior summer, or not all, but 90% of the junior summer internships are granted. And so if you're not in that cohort, it's extremely difficult to get a full-time offer post-graduation for these high finance roles because most of the seats are already filled. So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people say, hey, you have time, find yourself, explore, which I wish was true, everyone could do. But the reality is if it takes too long, if you take too long and decide what you want to do junior, senior year, it tends to be just much, much harder to actually break in. For people, Luca asked the question, advice for people in high school who want to get into hedge funds. I would say if you're still in high school, I would try to just learn a little bit more about like equities, bonds. Don't just look at equities, look at bonds. Look at understand the different types of hedge funds out there. Try to understand the industry better. Try to actually start trading in the markets, even if it's not real money or if it's very low. Ideally, real money, even if it's a couple $100. If you can start trading a real portfolio and start learning lessons that way, I think it's helpful. You might want to dabble. If it's not a lot of money, you can dabble on higher risk strategies to learn. learn about options, learn about, things like covered calls, puts, all that good stuff. Highly risky. You could lose all your money, but if you're playing with a very little amount, it might be worth the money you lose in terms of the lessons you learn. So I think that's good. Let me see. Here we go. Tom asks from YouTube, what advice would you give to somebody currently in asset management trying to break into investment banking? Hey, Tom, probably the easiest path for you, not the easiest rather, but the most highest probability path that would get you shot to get into IB would be to go the MBA route. If you get into a top 7, even top 15 school, the banks love hiring MBA associates out of there. So that kind of gets you another shot at on-campus recruiting if you didn't have it in undergrad. The other option, which you should try to do prior to just going and spending a ton of money on an MBA, is actually just doing some self-study work, doing a bunch of networking, and seeing if you can almost take a step back in terms of seniority. So if you've worked, say, for 3 years at a school, being willing to go and start as a first year or second year analyst is pretty much the norm. So, being open to that, staying humble, meeting with a lot of people in the industry, trying to get into like even a regional boutique that doesn't have a ton of deal flow. If you can still join an investment bank and you're doing actual investment banking work, which means valuation work, you're building DCFs, you're having football fields, you're doing pitches, all that stuff is going to allow you to be much more marketable. So it's really about just getting your foot in the door, even if you have to take a big pay cut at a regional boutique, to have that on your CV and build it up. So, if you couple that with some self-study on financial modeling training, I would highly recommend our elite modeling program for that. It just helps bankify your resume a little bit more, and so that you can kind of de-emphasize the asset management aspect of it. And then, but the MBA is going to give you the best kind of like window. It's just super expensive. So if you can, I would highly recommend that you turn over every stone you can first to see if you can, and be willing to go kind of downstream in terms of regional boutique and network aggressively there and try to make yourself useful, even if you're just a first year. If you have to go back to first year analyst, I think it's worth it if that's the channel you want to go into. The other option you could go into is actually transaction advisory services, try to make a transition into there. Still pretty competitive to get into, but they are doing a lot of like quality of earnings work, valuation work. So the skill set you're building there is actually pretty similar to what you need in investment banking. And so when deal flow picks up and banks are looking for more bodies or more associates or more senior analysts or experienced analysts, they tend to start recruiting at the big four. They start stealing a lot of the big four transaction advisory services people. So yeah, that's kind of the way. What else?
Patrick?
Yeah.
We have a surge on IG. We have a lot of questions flowing in.
Okay. Hit me with them.
Right.
Well, check out the green screen, what it does to my water bottle. Go for it. Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of questions here. I guess everyone's, all the interns are starting. Yeah, how are the interns doing? Are people kind of surviving out there? I think it's like week 2 for a lot of you. Hopefully you're doing okay. Pierce asked a really interesting question here. I'll put it up on the screen. Hi, Pierce from LinkedIn. I'm going into my junior year. Would you recommend me transfer to a top 10 university in undergrad, which will delay my graduation by 1 year? If your goal is banking, I think that can absolutely help you. Top 10 university. I'm not sure if you're talking London, like in the UK. Do you know where Pierce is from? Amir, can you look it up? Because my advice is a little bit different depending, but I don't mind the delay of 1 year in graduation. A lot of kids are in a rush to kind of get through school because they feel like they want to work. I was talking to somebody, actually, we were interviewing for WSO Academy, and he's like, I'm going to graduate early. And I'm like, why? Why would you graduate early? You're going to rush through school because you don't like it so much, but then you're like actually losing a whole summer internship opportunity, and you're reducing your chances of getting a better job out of school, which is going to, it doesn't like set your trajectory forever, but it can kind of change your trajectory early in your career. So I actually like the idea of an additional year if you can cut it financially. Yeah, I love that because it just gives you another rep of potentially stacking your resume with another strong internship. For those of you that haven't heard, we do have a finance research internship as well. There's a couple things we're running right now, a couple programs. One's the finance research internship program, but then we also have, I think the waitlist is open again for WSO Academy, and that is a 12-week program that's much more intensive program to help kind of get you ready for investment banking recruiting and high finance recruiting. So we've started, if you want to look at that, you can go to wallstreetassist.com/academy. But yeah, additional year allows you to do like a research internship, a finance internship like with us, or allows you to get into a regional boutique, helps you stack your resume, helps you start getting more interviews. Ideally early junior year or that late sophomore year, so you're not missing that main window.
He's in North Carolina.
North Carolina. So yeah, I would highly recommend you do the extra year for sure. And if you're at UNC, there's actually a pretty good set of alums. It's not really a target school, but like you could definitely make it from there if you're aggressively networking. So I think people sometimes hear like, oh, if you're at a non-target, you got to work so much harder. Yes, but you're also usually paying a lot less. And so if you learn the skills to the networking skills and you start becoming serious about that, especially over the summer where you like right now when you might have a little bit more time and you treat that like a full-time job, you can actually do a lot of damage and find yourself in super days for the non-targets at a bunch of places. So I recommend that you kind of buckle down on your networking, meeting with as many people as possible that are in the industry, making sure you're knowledgeable about what bankers actually do, what banking actually is. So you're asking good questions and not like questions you could just Google or ask ChatGPT. Any on here that look, here we go. Yeah, so Matt, I definitely apply to our internship. Matt's asking where do I even start to look for internships in finance or even something else in the industry? Yeah, just apply to ours. Apply to, you can look on LinkedIn to see if there's internships. Anybody have recommendations where else Matt could look? I mean, if you're at a community college, it's going to be, I think what's going to help you more is transferring into a four-year university in terms of like opening up doors for kind of higher end careers. Yeah, transferring to USC Pierce would be a good move. I thought you were at UNC, but yeah, if you're going to transfer to UNC, I think that's a good place to be. It's not going to be easy from there, but it puts you in the right path. Let me see. So this is interesting. Fatima asks, are there any chances to move from the IT team to front office and investment banking? Very low. The odds are super low, but never impossible because you're in the same building. Are you really great at like taking people to coffee, learning about them? Are you talking to HR all the time? Like you're really interested in going to front office? Has your CV been built in such a way where you show that you have the finance skills and you're ready to kind of work those 80, 90 hour weeks? I think those are all the questions that determine whether your chances are like 0.1% chance of doing it versus like a 5 to 10% chance of doing it. So not impossible, but if you're kind of like dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, everything's polished, you know everything, and you keep networking, the odds start climbing as time goes on. But it's a lot. It's going to probably be a lot of work because a lot of them just won't give you the time of day. So it's a question of like, are you good at like schmoozing? Are you good at taking people out? And like, can you get any of the bankers to actually, can you befriend any of them? And I think if you're able to do that, anything's possible because they can say, hey, let's give Fatima over in IT a chance to interview. But then it's on you. If you actually get into that interview room, you need to be over prepared because they're not going to go easy on you. Let's see what else. Let's see here. So Shrij is asking, senior year, no internships yet, but I'm focused on the CFA level 1 SA this summer. Is this helpful for breaking the IB post-graduation? What do you advise? Hi, Shrij. I think you're a little late. Usually by this point, there's at least spring weeks. I'm not sure where you are, but if you're in London or near London, it's typically you've done some internships by this point, and the CFA is not really going to help you for IB. It's going to help you more for asset management. Same with SIE. So yeah, this more series sales and trading focused type roles, maybe middle office type roles. I suggest you start applying and talking to as many people as possible. That's my advice, because you're pretty late. Not to stress you out, but just a lot of kids have internships that, at least here in the US, especially that lead directly to a full-time offer. Here's a good question. Is the Canadian recruiting similar to the American system that I assume most of? Yeah, it's pretty similar in terms of like the first round, second rounds. There's just a couple of target universities like Ivy at Queens, and the only difference is a much smaller scale. So you'll often have the top schools like an Ivy recruiting the kids recruiting to come to the US for trying to get to New York or trying to get to Chicago for a few years. So there's it's similar in the sense of, yeah, it's just a much smaller scale because there's only a few large banks there. Toronto is kind of the main hub with like RBC and BMO and stuff like that. But I think it's similar, just much smaller scale, probably a little bit more competitive because it's so small scale. There's not as many seats. And then specifically, that's why we see a lot of Canadians kind of coming to the US for the opportunities that present itself in New York, especially. Hope that's helpful. Let's see here. Here you go. Do an internship with roadmap advisors summer or during the school year. We will work you super hard, but you'll get it. But you'll get super qualified to get into other programs. So yeah, that's an option. I'm a 1 year into the asset management career at a good firm, but how do I break into IBPE? I think I already went over this, Tom. I think you need to start networking, talking to people in the industry. IB is very different from PE. So, one step at a time, trying to break into IB from asset management is going to be already an uphill battle. I'd focus on that. If you want to go PE eventually, then sure, that's fine. But try to just focus on the IB. Dude, this is great. Does he ever take his Patriots hat off? I'm pretty bald. I'll take it off for you guys. I'm pretty bald. So that's kind of one of the reasons. Rarely take my Patriots hat off. I actually usually wear a Celtics hat too. So maybe next time I'll wear it. Jan, I'll wear the Celtics hat. Here we go. Don asks, has my investment banking career been helpful in building WSO from the ground up? What advice, skill set, preparation would you have for current investment bankers? Yeah, I think investment banking was helpful in the sense of that it kind of resets the goalpost in terms of what work ethic is. And when you are kind of used to 90-hour work weeks, and then you drop to like 60-hour work weeks, which was more common for me when I was in private equity, it allowed me to have an extra, I felt like I was on vacation. I had like an extra 10, 20 hours a week to do something. And so that's when Wall Street Oasis was born. And so I think going through those very long hours for a couple of years was super helpful. Definitely the actual like modeling skills and Excel skills have come in handy. The organization, the attention to detail, it's come in handy in terms of being able to do everything from helping with design to helping with presentations to sales copy to everything. So I think it helps you. And then in terms of your second question, what advice, skill set, and preparation would you have for current investment bankers? I think bring a notepad and pen when you're asking questions so you don't have to ask the same question twice. I think when you're doing your work, don't rush to get it done so fast that you don't print it out and review it. Make sure you've caught all the changes, or something that's like obviously wrong, you don't hand it in. You'll be shocked, absolutely shocked, the number of times you'll print something out, look at it and be like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. Let me go back. You'll do it again, print it out again. You'll go and look at it and say, wait, that still doesn't make sense. If you just sense check things, you'll avoid embarrassing yourself several times before you hand it to an analyst or an associate that's senior to you. So I would absolutely say that's probably the best advice. And then just positive attitude and willingness to learn. I think it's going to go a super long way towards getting a return offer if you're an intern, for example. Let's see here. Truman Q says, as someone who's interning at a major bank with one more summer left, what recommendations do you have in terms of networking path to take from here? Path number one is just getting a return offer. And that's not necessarily an assured thing right now with where deal flow is. So I think there was somebody on the forum saying the other day that they there was like layoffs the first day the intern started. And so like I think what I'd say is like just try to get the return offer, because with that return offer you just have that protection, that downside safety net. So in terms of like networking, I think you should be doing that actively throughout the summer internally at your bank, but also trying to meet with people at other banks. I know it's tough when you're working long hours, so definitely focus first on the internship and doing a great job so that you increase the odds of you landing that return offer, because that's like by far the highest priority for the summer, so that you kind of you don't have to go into senior year panicking. Yeah. So another good question from TG Smart. So obviously, is moving from transaction advisor to IB or PE plausible? Obviously not in the current market. Absolutely plausible. It happens all the time. So not so frequently now, not so often now, but when deal flow picks up, like I said, if this was 2020, they would have been, Taz was getting picked over by the banks. Everyone was looking for a senior analyst, somebody with accounting skills, valuation skills to help them with so much deal flow. So yeah, if you're putting yourself out there and you have transaction advisory services on your resume, you're definitely gonna get some looks. If you're being smart about how you craft it on your resume, if you're being smart about your networking. So absolutely, I've seen this hundreds of times. So Marat asks, why does private equity usually hire people only from investment banking and consulting? So it's a good question, Marat. There's, I think, several reasons. First is because simply they don't have huge HR departments, these private equity firms. So they leverage the HR departments and recruiting processes that the top investment banks and consulting firms already have in place as a proxy for quality of applicant. And so when you don't have a lot of manpower to review tens of thousands of applications and do hundreds and hundreds of interviews, if you can look at a industry or two industries in this case that are already pulling really smart kids in that are developing skill sets that are relevant to what you want your associates to have, then why would you go try to look at other candidates outside of those two pools when you can fill your class with very competent associates from those two pools? So it's kind of like saying, like, why aren't they looking at people who are doing XYZ? Well, they don't need to. They can usually find enough people that they really love from the top banks and the top consulting firms. And then just the skill sets themselves. So they know that people in investment banking tend to get pretty strong modeling skills. So they're going to have an easier time kind of building LBO models. They're going to have an easier time building detailed operating models. They're going to have the work ethic to figure out the diligence side. And then for consultants, they know that they're going to be really good at looking at industry mapping, potentially, coordinating, talking to CEOs and CFOs, because they're on engagements where they're kind of interacting with senior management. So there's a lot of like actual great skills that the analysts that are coming from those programs and those industries bring, that the private equity firm is looking for. So I think that's it. What's up with you, Peter? How you doing? Is Web3 NFT experience bad on my resume for IB? I don't think it's necessarily bad unless it's dominating your CV. Like, I think people may ask you about it, and if you're passionate about it, great. But I don't think you want to, like, if half your resume is all about this NFT experience and internships, I think it's, it's all, take your CV as like if you've done something impressive in Web3 or NFT, I think putting it on there would actually help you. But if you're like just dabbling in it and like trading, I think it kind of depends what you mean by experience. Like, is it truly impressive or not? Truman says, how important would you say networking is in recruiting as compared to 5 years ago? It's as important as ever. I don't see, I mean, it was very important back then. It's kind of a little bit, people are kind of stepping up. It's harder to get in touch with people because I think people are catching on that networking is one of the most powerful ways to actually get your foot in the door and unlock kind of get those interviews that are so tough to get if you don't have the traditional background. But yeah, that's it. I think, yeah, super important. I don't think it's necessarily more or less than 5 years ago. It's just maybe a little bit harder now, but it's still incredibly important. Let's see what else we got here. Anything from Insta, Amir, that I should answer, or are you feeding them to me?
That these from YouTube are the Insta ones.
YouTube. Oh, okay. Best role to get into private equity apart from M&A consulting. So I'd tell you, I'd try to reframe this. Your best chance of getting into M&A and consulting, if apart from M&A consulting, is actually just like doing networking and meeting people and convincing them you're super sharp and you could add a lot of value, convincing them that you understand what private equity deal looks like. So we have a private equity master package. It includes a private equity deal process course and an LBO modeling course. So like that would be a minimum of like what you need to show that you've taken those, you understand them, you can talk the language, you understand what an NDA, LOI, IOI is, you understand how to write an investment committee memo, you understand how to run a diligence process, you know how to read a QOV earnings, QOV report. If you can say all these things and you're speaking the language and you can kind of network and maybe you can convince them to let you in as an analyst, not as a pre-MBA associate. That's what I would say is going to matter more than whatever other role, because whatever other role you're coming from, if it's finance oriented where you're doing valuation work, it'd be helpful. But like your odds are so low anyways, coming outside from outside these two buckets, that it's going to be really hard. And M&A, I wouldn't say apart from M&A, I'd say apart from IB, because private equity funds will take people outside of M&A, like Levfin sponsors place as well, and even industry groups that have some analytical rigor on their models and stuff like that. Chance asks, what's the best thing to do to prepare for my summer IB internship next summer? Chance, I'd say definitely brush up on your Excel skills, modeling skills. I would try to just meet your fellow interns if you can prior, so you feel like more comfortable going in. See if you can like just establish some connections there. That's probably the best thing. And then, rest up before you start and be ready to work hard. Let's see what else we got here. As a recent graduate, is it still possible to apply to a summer internship being a recent grad of the 2022 class? Yeah, it's possible. I just don't think most of them are going to just not look at your application and throw it out unless you're doing the networking alongside it. So again, I repeat this like from the mountaintops. I scream it 100 times, but people don't really take it to heart. And I know they don't take it to heart because I'm seeing applications from some of you coming into the academy, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn and I see like 87 connections, 32 connections, 103 connections. And so like, I'm just thinking like people still aren't quite grasping the importance of developing relationships. So what I'd say is, yes, you can apply. You probably aren't going to get selected unless you know somebody. And so how do you know somebody? Well, you got to start the networking. And how do you do the networking? Well, you got to get your LinkedIn profile polished. You got to make sure your smiling photo looking business formal, looking good. Not like, I've seen people like this, like death stare. I've seen people like 500 feet behind from the camera, like in some vacation or something. I'm like, what are you doing? This is a professional social network. Or even people like holding their child and smiling. That's me. So I have the luxury of being an entrepreneur. I don't care really. But for those of you trying to break into a career in finance, you want to have it be as down the fairway, by the book as you can. Make sure it's polished. Make sure you're showing actual results from your work, not just like, this was my responsibility 1. This was my responsibility 2. You really want to show like, I did this. This was the impact. I did this. This was the impact, and show that you were a top performer. Yeah. Peter, you're welcome. Thanks for joining. Let's Let's see what else we got here. Let's see what else we have. Is that it? I think I'm going to call it because it's been 30 minutes. Almost on the nose. But anyways, I appreciate everybody joining. I'm going to go play chess with my son for a good half hour. He keeps beating me. He's 6 years old. What does that say about me? All right, everybody. Have a great Wednesday. Have a great rest of your week. And I will probably not be on next week because I'm traveling, a little mini vacation, but we'll be back soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.